Every house has its sounds, its sighs and its settles. For Leo, in his new apartment, they were the language of his solitude. The hum of the refrigerator was his white noise. The creak of the old floorboards was his lullaby. He was alone and he was at peace. But peace, like sleep, is fragile. It began subtly. A door he was certain he had left open would be found closed in the morning. The faint, sweet scent of jasmine would sometimes linger in the hallway, a perfume no one in the house wore. Then the sounds at night changed. The rhythm of the house's breathing altered. The creaks in the floorboards no longer sounded random. They had a pattern, a slow, deliberate step, pacing from the living room to the stop just outside his bedroom door. Leo would wake, his heart hammering against his ribs, and stare into the perfect blackness of his room, listening. The pacing would always stop. The silence that followed was infinitely worse. One night, the rules of the game changed. Leo awoke not to sound but to sensation. The unmistakable feeling of the far side of his king-size mattress compressing, as if a great weight had just settled beside him. He froze, every muscle locked in primal terror. He was not alone in the bed. He lay paralyzed for what felt like an eternity, listening to the sound of his own blood roaring in his ears. And then he heard the other sound, a soft, wet, rhythmic clicking. It was close, inches from his ear. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, he commanded his neck to turn. His eyes, now adjusted to the gloom, saw the shape beside him. It was a woman, or the silhouette of one, lying on her side, facing him. Her form was dark, opaque, blotting out the light from the window behind her. Where her face should have been was not a void, but a swirling, faintly luminescent mist, like static on an old television screen. And the sound, that awful soft clicking, was coming from her. It was the sound of her knitting needles, moving swiftly and silently in the space between them. She was knitting something he could not see, her attention seemingly fixed on her work. Leo squeezed his eyes shut, praying for it to be a dream, a sleep paralysis demon, anything his mind could rationalize. When he opened them again, she was closer. Her misty face was now just a hand's breadth from his. The clicking needles were faster, more frantic. He could feel a coldness emanating from her, a deep, grave cold that seeped into his bones. He tried to scream, but his voice was gone, stolen by the dark. And then she spoke. Her voice was not a sound that traveled through the air, but a thought implanted directly into his mind. It was the sound of dry leaves skittering across concrete. The needles clicked furiously. Leo watched, helpless, as she held up her work. It wasn't yarn. It was a tangled gossamer thread, silver and faintly glowing, and he realized with a jolt of ultimate horror that the thread was coming from him, from his own chest. She was knitting with his life force. With a final sharp click, she held up the completed project. A small, perfectly formed, shimmering shroud. She gave a sigh that smelled of dust and forgotten things. Then she began to move. She didn't sit up or slide away. She simply sank. She sank through the bed, through the floor, descending out of sight, taking the tiny shroud with her. The cold vanished. The pressure on the mattress lifted. Leo gasped, bolting upright. His room was empty. The first gray light of dawn was filtering through the window. He was drenched in sweat, his entire body trembling. He might have convinced himself it was all a nightmare, a horrific, vivid dream. But then he saw it that on the empty side of the bed, neatly laid upon his pillow, was a single gleaming silver knitting needle, and Leo knew, with a certainty that chilled his soul, that she would be back. She had left it behind on purpose. A tenant always returns for their belongings.
Just call me over if you're having night terrors again, okay? And remember, your flashlight's right here. Hey, are you okay?